Alright, this is going to be my review of the Orion v2.1. And to start, it was available on, or through a list on UK Vapors Forum. It was I believe it was 180 euros, which translated to about $220. The list is currently closed on the Orion v2.1 as Les continues to fill the final orders from the list. And then I believe him and Palpo are going to start working on the variable voltage Orion. But waited on the list for about 2 months, I think, give or take a couple of weeks, and so far I'm pretty happy with it. I have like a surprisingly large amount of critical or negative things to say about the Orion, but with that preface in mind, I still wind up taking the Orion out with me everywhere. I'll start with the good. First off, it's beautifully machined. Every thread is perfect, almost totally noiseless. Every cut and all the machining marks are flawless. There are no dings in the original finish. It's pretty damn near perfect. Like I said, threads really smooth as butter. Every hole perfect, and yeah, so that's that. And what they added in the 2.1 that wasn't included in the 2, I know that they added a countersink to the mouthpiece. The reasoning I'm not totally sure. I think it's to keep condensation from building up at the top of the mouthpiece and helping to funnel it down. I don't own an Orion v2 1.1 or 1.0, so I can't really comment on that, but yeah, so built-in mouthpiece, if you weren't aware, which it's kind of nice. That on top of the really solid construction and the recessed button, and the tank being slightly smaller in diameter than the tube of the mod, it feels damn sturdy, and I think that's why I take it out so much. I really don't have any other mod that feels quite as sturdy. I mean, the Zens, the button wobbles, so it doesn't really stand up straight. The GGTS, as perfect as I think it is, the telescope, unless you really crank down on it, it feels like it has the potential to wobble. Yeah, I mean, no other hybrids really out there compare as far as the overall build quality, paired with a feeling of durability and the fact that it's just not gonna break. I can't imagine breaking this thing. It's just too solid of a device. It really feels like one piece, and the built-in mouthpiece really contributes a lot to that. And as much as I'd like to use my own drip tips, it feels like a worthwhile sacrifice. If I could only have one Genesis hybrid or Genesis atomizer, it probably wouldn't be the Orion, because I like being able to use my own drip tips, be it glass or stainless steel. But built-in mouthpiece, it's fine. One issue I have with it is the diameter of the hole in the mouthpiece. I wish it was a bit larger. Mac 206 or Marco Seattle, famously, I guess, bores his mouthpiece out. It's the Mac tweak, and bores his air hole out, which I've done myself to 1/16 of an inch. And I believe the stock Orion air hole is 1 millimeter. It's damn tiny, and I don't mind that it came with a 1 millimeter air hole, because I would rather it come too small than too big, so I can bore it out to my own specs. But I don't know what went into the planning that Les decided on 1 millimeter, as the Orion has the capability to run a dual wick setup, and I can't imagine trying to vape a dual wick, dual coil atomizer with that one millimeter air hole. It just doesn't make sense to me. But that's weird. But I guess that brings me to my next point. It does have 2 ground screws, so you can, in theory, run a dual coil, dual wick setup, which I have opted to not do, as I just don't feel like the airflow would be adequate to satiate both coils' airflow needs. So single coil, I'm running 3 wraps of 30 gauge Canthal A1 with a 325 mesh wick. I believe the wick hole is 2.5 millimeters, but I can check that right now. Let's see. Oh, it is 3 millimeters actually. So that's probably the second largest Genesis atomizer wick that I've worked with. The DID at 3.5 millimeters being the largest, and then I think the Zen with the insulator pulled out is 3.5 as well. But so that's that. Big wick hole is great. It wicks really well, and the tank is so short that I've heard, because there's less distance for the juice to travel before it gets to the coil, it helps to improve wicking. I can't really notice too much of a difference. It wicks just as well, no better than my DID, maybe slightly better than the Zen, but only when this tank is full. Yeah, so I guess another big issue I have with it is the tank. The tank, you actually have to sand it down to get the air hole on the cap to line up with your wick, which is, it's a pain in the ass, and it feels lazy to me, to be totally honest. And I don't mean to be too critical, but when you buy a $220 hybrid device, I feel like it should be ready to go. Like you should just have to pop in your wick and wrap a coil. And I've probably put 2 hours maybe into like sanding my tank to get the cap to fit perfectly, because before I had an O-ring on there and it was leaking. It didn't feel like it was making a proper air seal with the top cap, so the suction didn't feel perfect. It just sucked, so I had to sand it, and now that it's sanded, it's perfect. My air hole lines up right over the wick. But then my next issue is that the button, I'm not going to say convenient, but as well as the button works, it's rotated 90 degrees to the side of the wick. So it's really awkward to hold the device to get the wick at the bottom and your finger on the button. Like I need to hold it like that, so my index finger is on the button to get it to wick well, and kind of a pain in the ass. I really wish that he had done a button right below the wick or behind it, but where it is now, it's really inconvenient, and there's no way to rotate the post axis like you could on the Katana, so the button would line up better with the wick hole. So I'm stuck with what I've got, and it's not a huge issue, but it makes a difference. And that's the kind of thing that, like, with a little bit of quality control and some focused intention to make it the most convenient device possible, which it's not, and I know it's not really advertised as such. It is kind of a DIY mod, if you will. That would make it, to me, a world's improvement over the current button situation. But another issue I have with the button is that it does work really well. It fires perfectly every time, but it's electronic. And even the best of electronic buttons have a limited number of days and a limited number of times that they'll fire before the button fails. And besides for my Provari, everything else I have, the other a dozen mods I have, maybe, they're all mechanical. And I have this and the Provari, my only two electronic component containing mods, and makes me uneasy. My mechanical mods, if anything breaks, if that's the right word, I can isolate the problem to the exact nut, screw, bolt, tarnish on contacts, whatever it may be, and I can fix it, and I can find the problem. With an electronic switch, the day that it goes out, I'm going to have to send this back to Germany, where it came from, to have a new switch put in, if Palipo and Les are still making them. So I'm uneasy, and I can do little mechanical things. I can file my drip tips down, I can bore my air holes out, I can even sand my tank, but I am not competent enough in circuitry and electronic engineering to re-engineer or repair this switch if it were to break. And makes me hesitant about it. And yeah, so I guess the next thing that is kind of unique about this mod, battery goes in positive side down, and if you put the positive side facing up like I did when I first bought it, or when I first got it, it instantly starts to fire. So if you can hear, which is interesting. And this is 18650 mode. It does have an 18350 mode, which I'll show you right now. This bottom cap, the middle section, unscrew that. Take your little 18350, positive side down, mod on, and then you will have one of the, if not the smallest Genesis hybrid that I have ever seen. And it clocks in at, let's see, .46 inches, which is damn small. I mean, if you want to compare that to a Zen AY, or here, let's see, a Precise Plus 18650, it is almost the exact same size as Precise Plus 18650 without an atomizer or drip tip on there. So it's really tiny, and it's a great little stealth device. But one issue I have with it in 18350 mode is that if you can see that little gap there in the threads, it's just barely too short to comfortably house an an AW-IMR 18350, which is, as far as I know, it's the industry standard. It's what almost everyone who runs an 18350 uses, and the fact that it doesn't fit without crushing the either end of your battery to get it to fit is kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know what could have been done to avoid that. I don't know if it was possible, or maybe it's just my batteries, but I have 7 or 8 18350 AW-IMRs that I've tested, and they all fit just like that. So what are you going to do? The next thing, the vent hole is in the bottom cap. It does have a vent hole, though it is a very, very tiny air hole. And I'm tempted to bore that out to 5/64 of an inch, maybe a little bit smaller, but it's there. My next issue with it, I guess, is the positive post system that it uses. If you can see, the positive post, rather than a screw locking in your R wire with a locking it up against another firm a post, would have you come on, autofocus. There we go. You can see it's a spring with 2 washers above it with a nut on top of that on a little threaded post. And the way it works is that you loosen up the nut on top a tiny bit, you pull your R wire in between the 2 washers, and then you crank down on the nut. But it works, but it's finicky, and it's probably the hardest Genesis atomizer I've ever had to set up. And that's just considering building the coil. That positive post really, it works, and it works fine when you have the time to really learn the correct tautness, and but it's iffy, and it feels a little inconsistent to me. Those washers, I just took all the contacts apart to polish everything up. They get disgusting. Before I cleaned them, the performance of my device was pretty subpar compared to when I first got it, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. I don't really love the system. I might end up replacing the spring and the washers with something, maybe more nuts of the same size as the top one to make it one solid pillar of nuts, so I can just lock in one R wire. But even so, in spite of all, like, I hope it doesn't sound like too negative of a review. It's a really good device. It performs really well. Flavor right out of the box is, with the 1mm air hole, mind you, is probably the best of any Genesis atomizer I've used. And I think that might be because the air hole is so small, you get such a refined, dense vapor from it. But even with my 1/16 of an inch air hole, vapor production, flavor, throat hit are all outstanding. Yeah, I guess that's it. $220 is the retail price. Do I regret paying $220? Absolutely not. Excuse me. I'm happy to have it in my collection of hybrids and other PVs, but I see them go on the classifieds for, just saw one for like $450, and would I pay $450? Probably not. But $220? Sure. So that's pretty much all I have to say about it. The tank, real pain in the ass to sand. The button makes me anxious, and I don't like how it's placed, but the construction is really solid. Vape's great, looks really cool, has a nice machined matte finish to it. It's the best way I can describe it is like a cross between a Genesis and a Media Blasted Precise Plus. It's somewhere in the middle there. It's you can see faintly the machining lines from where it was lathed, but at the same time they're faint enough that it feels like one solid matte finish, and it looks sleek. When I first saw the photos of it, right as I ordered it, I was like, oh, the second I get that, polishing that shit right up. But now that I have it, it's got some gnarly scratches on it. Took it camping with me for a weekend, and it got dropped, beat around. I hiked probably 30 miles in the weekend with it in my pocket, and it was fine. But I kind of like that it's beat up. It's the one device I have, besides for my Zen AYS, that isn't polished. As weird as that sounds, I've like gone out of my way to polish all of my mods to a high gloss stainless steel finish. Like, here's a Zen standard of mine, and I kind of like the matte. Between the like true sturdiness of the mod and the matte finish that doesn't show fingerprints really, eats up scratches without really showing them, and no parts that stick out, no parts that are removable without unscrewing anything. It's a damn solid device, and pretty happy with it. So take what you will from my review, and you know, I paid for this mod myself, didn't receive it for free. All my opinions are my own. I know some people might disagree with a couple of the comments I made about it, but that's what I got. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will have a few more videos in the near future. I have a tutorial for building a DID wick and coil, which I'm going to need to reshoot because currently it's more of my hands and fingers than it is wicks and coils, but gonna hopefully shoot that and have it up by sometime, maybe Sunday or Monday, and have a review of the Precise Plus 18650 and P Plus 16 coming up. The mini DID I'll of course review as soon as I get it and have it set up and am comfortable and competent enough to review it, and gonna have a review of the Vapor, the dual air hole automatic draw, coming up sometime in the near future. But that's what I got. Enjoy. And I also have a juice review that I filmed with my girlfriend and a buddy that I just need to edit, but that'll also be up hopefully by Monday. But again, enjoy. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and if not, tough shit. Thanks. Bye.